The morning sun struggled to pierce the heavy gray clouds over the Italian countryside. It was 1943, and the once picturesque hills were scarred by the relentless advance of war. Smoke curled from distant fires, and the acrid scent of burnt wood and cordite filled the air. For Private Jack Calloway, the world had shrunk to the narrow, muddy roads leading toward Monte Cassino, where German forces held a seemingly impenetrable fortress. Jack trudged along with his platoon, his rifle slung over his shoulder and his boots caked with mud. The weight of his pack and the relentless march had worn him down, but it was the memories of home that gnawed at him most. In his breast pocket, he carried a letter from his younger sister, Mary, written in neat handwriting that spoke of ration lines, blackouts, and the hope that Jack would return safely. "You good, Calloway?" came a voice beside him. Jack turned to see Corporal Eddie Martinez, his best friend since basic training. Eddie's smile was weary but genuine, a rare light in the darkness of their ordeal. "Still breathing," Jack replied with a faint grin. "Guess that's all we can ask for, huh?" Eddie said, adjusting his helmet. "Word is we're supposed to link up with the Brits and push those Krauts out of that monastery." Jack nodded, though the thought of another assault filled him with dread. Monte Cassino loomed in the distance, its ancient walls defying the fury of Allied artillery. It was more than a fortress. It was a symbol of resistance, and the Germans had turned it into a death trap. The platoon reached a makeshift camp at the base of the hill as dusk settled over the land. The men gathered around small fires, eating cold rations and whispering about the next day's attack. Jack sat on an overturned crate, sharpening his bayonet with slow, deliberate strokes. "You ever think about what you'll do when this is all over?" Eddie asked, settling beside him. Jack paused, the whetstone hovering over the blade.
"Yeah.
I'll go back to the farm. Help Mary keep things running. Maybe get a dog. What about you?" Eddie chuckled. "I'm hitting the beach. California, man. Sun, surf, and no one shooting at me." The two men laughed softly, a fleeting reprieve from the tension that hung in the air. As night fell, Jack lay in his foxhole, staring at the stars. He thought of his father's voice, teaching him to till the soil and mend fences. He thought of Mary's laughter as she chased fireflies in the summer fields. The memories were a balm to his weary soul, but they were also a reminder of what he had to survive for. At dawn, the attack began. Allied artillery thundered, sending plumes of earth and stone skyward as the infantry advanced. Jack's heart pounded as he followed Eddie and the others, their boots crunching over the frost-covered ground. The Germans opened fire from fortified positions, their machine guns spitting death across the hillside. Jack dove behind a low wall, his rifle pressed to his chest. The screams of wounded men mingled with the roar of explosions, creating a symphony of chaos. "Go! Go!" shouted Lieutenant Harris, waving his men forward. Jack gritted his teeth and sprinted toward a cluster of rocks, his body low. Bullets whizzed past, and he felt the ground shake as a mortar round exploded nearby. He landed hard behind the rocks, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Eddie slid in beside him, his face smeared with dirt. "We've got to take out that machine gun nest." Jack nodded, his fear pushed aside by the urgency of the moment. Together, they crept along the rocks, moving closer to the enemy position. When they were within range, Eddie lobbed a grenade, and Jack followed with a burst of rifle fire. The explosion silenced the machine gun, and the two men charged forward, securing the position. Their victory was short-lived. More Germans emerged from the monastery, their weapons trained on the advancing Allies. Jack and Eddie fought desperately, their ammunition dwindling as the battle raged on. By afternoon, the hill was a patchwork of craters and corpses. The Allied forces had gained ground, but at a terrible cost. Jack knelt beside Eddie, who was clutching his leg, blood seeping through his pants. "You're going to be fine," Jack said, wrapping a bandage around the wound. Eddie grimaced, but managed a weak smile. "You're a terrible liar, Calloway." Jack looked around, his mind racing. They were pinned down, and the medics were nowhere to be seen. He couldn't leave Eddie, but staying meant certain death. "Stay with me," Jack said, gripping Eddie's hand. "We'll get out of this." Eddie nodded, his eyes filled with trust. As the sun dipped below the horizon, reinforcements arrived. British troops joined the fight, their presence a welcome relief. Jack carried Eddie on his back, weaving through the chaos toward the safety of the rear lines. When they reached the medics, Jack collapsed beside his friend, his body trembling with exhaustion. Eddie was whisked away on a stretcher, his hand briefly squeezing Jack's in silent gratitude. The days blurred together as the battle for Monte Cassino dragged on. Jack fought with a determination he didn't know he possessed, driven by the faces of those he had lost and the hope of seeing Eddie again. When the monastery finally fell, it was a hollow victory. The ancient structure lay in ruins, and the cost in lives was staggering. Jack stood among the rubble, his rifle slung over his shoulder. The war had taken so much, but it hadn't taken his will to endure. Months later, Jack found himself on a transport ship bound for home. The war in Europe was nearing its end, and he was one of the lucky ones who had survived. As the ship sailed across the Atlantic, Jack read a letter from Eddie, who was recovering in a London hospital. "Calloway, you're a damn hero. I owe you my life, and I won't forget it. When this is all over, come find me in California. First beer's on me. Your brother in arms, Eddie." Jack folded the letter and slipped it into his pocket. He stared out at the endless ocean, his thoughts turning to Mary and the farm. The world he was returning to would never be the same, but neither would he. As the ship neared the coast, Jack felt a sense of hope stirring within him. Beneath the iron sky of war, he had found courage, friendship, and the will to survive. And now, as the horizon brightened, he knew he was finally heading home.